Hey everyone, this is Nelson Rose. I am the writer, blogger, whatever you want to call it, for the Quest for Light. And this is the first actual video installment that I've ever done for the blog. And I just wanted to say hello to everybody before I started. What I want to talk about today is the recent postings that I've done. I know that to some folks it seems as if maybe I have maybe misled them due to the views that I have not being necessarily the same views that they have after a long series of using biblical study and biblical scholarship from both a liberal Christian perspective, but mostly a rational, ethical Jewish perspective in my biblical scholarship. But the quest has always been a quest. I've never said or proclaimed that I've had all the answers. All I've said is that I'm looking for them. And what I've done is tried to share as much as I could along the way and be as open and honest as I possibly can. And anybody who's followed the blog for any series of time can see the number of times I've made shifts in my theological views, and this recent shift is one that's kind of a culmination of everything that's gone on for the past couple of years. The reason the blog kind of went quiet for a little while was because I was kind of trying to solidify exactly what I believed, and as confusing as the changes that were going on in my mind were, I was pretty much sure that I had come to a view that I was more comfortable with, and that view is not a traditional theistic view, where I have a belief of a supreme creator God. That's not to say that I'm an atheist, because I'm not, but I have a different view of the origin of the cosmos and what keeps everything in motion. What I no longer adhere to is the concept of a static being that is God, an almighty Father that exists somewhere in the heavens who is keeping a watchful eye over his subjects, being us, and that this same being, roamed around by himself and created everything. Whatever the cosmological argument, depending on the religion that you have, is. Because the other thing to consider is which God is the right God. After studying not only biblical texts, the Christian scriptures and the Jewish scriptures, I've also looked at the Quran. I've studied the Quran. I went through it twice. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I've read the Zendavestas. I've read the writings of the ancient Egyptians. I've read the Iliad. I've studied the concepts of Zeus and of Thor, and which God is the right God when we want to start talking from an anthropomorphic perspective, or do we want to shed the concept of an anthropomorphic God now that we're in the 21st century and we've got rockets and satellites and cellular technology, and I'm talking to you through airwaves. When you look at where we are now versus where we came from when people started putting these concepts together, you have to start to wonder, maybe it's time that we evolve our theological views as well, rather than believe in almost a fairy tale concept of where morality came from. Why don't we embrace the science that we now have? We can't deny Darwinism. Okay, we cannot deny that natural selection has occurred. There's scientific proof of that. We can't deny that the earth wasn't created in 6 days, 8,000 years ago. Okay, we can't. 8,000, whatever the nonsense is. We can't, that didn't happen. We have evidence within the planet itself to date the Earth a lot older than that. So what then becomes a biblical text? Well, biblical text should be considered what the Jews have always considered them to be: texts that were written by people a long time ago. And not everything within those texts may necessarily be exactly true. They definitely aren't the words of God, because God doesn't write. They are the people's words. Now, whether you want to say they're inspired or not is entirely up to you. If you find inspiration in the story of Jephthah coming home, and the first thing that he sees would be the first thing that sacrifices to God, and it's his daughter coming out to greet him. If you think and you find inspiration in stories like that, then more power to you. I kind of view it more of as an allegory of a rash vow that somebody made, and they didn't think something through. So what becomes of the biblical text should really be what should have become of the biblical text a long time ago, and that we should look at them from a perspective of time and place and context. So I'm not going to get into the Bible too much, because I don't want to come across as I'm bashing it. I want to get more into the concept of deity itself, where my view has changed, where I had shifted from an anthropomorphic perspective of what God may or may not be, but what I've become more convinced of is that God is not a static being that resides in a heavenly palace somewhere with angels surrounding him and serving his every need. No. Where is this heavenly palace? Where exactly did Jesus ascend to? Because I haven't seen a man or a palace floating around in the sky the last couple of times I've been on a plane. And I know that when the satellites roam around the earth, that they don't see, there's no paradise that's blocking them. So when we look at some of the things that have been written about what will happen to the earth in the quote-unquote end of days, with stars coming down, that was back when they thought these little things were little speckles of dust that were going to come down and rain. But if a star hit the planet, we'd be dead. It would be multiple stars hitting us. It would be one, we're gone, boom, that's it. So what we need to look at is what is God in the 21st century? What is God? Now that we can talk to people, I'm talking to I don't know how many people right now. I don't know how long this message may go around. But what I do know is that this is not something that I could do 4,000 years ago. So I'd write stuff down. And from a perspective of textual variance, you would use things like hyperbole, and you would use things like allegory, so that the message could be more timeless, and probably used for other things later on down the road. But back to the concept of God is, I've abandoned the static being, the Almighty Father concept, because I'm thoroughly convinced that doesn't exist. And the reason I'm convinced that there's no Almighty Father who's watchfully taking care of us is just by looking at the world today, looking at little children starving in other continents, looking at news reports of scumbags that rape little children, kidnap teenage girls and hold them hostage in a house for 10 years, raping and beating them repeatedly and having children with them. I look at the millions of Jews that died in Auschwitz. I look at the millions of people that have died in the name of different religions, whether it be Christianity, who did do their share of murderous things, whether it be the Jews or whether it be the Muslims. All religions are guilty. All the three Abrahamic religions, that is, are guilty of atrocious injustices against humanity in the name of their God. So, when you look at that part of it, and when you look at, like I said, the needy children, the children that are being abused, the children that go hungry, the women that get raped, I know what the defense is. Satan and original sin, and we're all given free will, and we have to make the decisions for ourselves to be good, and we're ultimately going to be the people that have to face God as the eternal judge at the end. That works great if you're the rapist. That works great if you're the oppressor. That doesn't really work well if you're the woman that's being raped, or if you're the child that's being abused, or if you're the little kid that's in Africa going hungry. No, that doesn't work. That individual has had their free will, their freedom, their liberty stripped from them by this person. And no doubt, this has happened to many faithful people. So we can take the faithless people out of the equation for a minute, because obviously they're not calling out to God. And the Christians, the many Christians that get raped, and the many Christians that get murdered, the many Christians that lose everything in a hurricane or an earthquake or something like that. No doubt they called out to Jesus. No doubt they called out to God during this time. And nothing happened. Nothing. Okay? That wasn't acts of their free will. That was something that happened to them against their will. So we can't say sin caused it. We can say something or somebody else caused it. Now, I don't know about you, but as a parent, if my kids are screaming out to me because somebody's hurting them, or they're screaming out to me because they're in danger, they're, "Daddy, help me," I'm going to drop what I'm doing and I'm going to help my kids. It's not even a question. It's something that I'm going to do because I'm a father and I love my kids. So what about God? If God is this static creator, almighty in the heavens, that's taking care of everybody, why doesn't he answer when his children are crying out to him for help? Maybe because that God doesn't exist. Maybe because what we need to remove is this anthropomorphic concept from the Bronze and early Iron Ages of God. Of a God of the gaps, of the unexplainable things and the ineffable things being explained through a mystery. And embrace a concept of a dynamic becoming or a dynamic essence. What causes life? What causes love? What causes compassion? What causes mercy? What causes kindness? What causes wisdom? All of these different components, these divine attributes that we would say, if you put them all together, would be God. Now I think when we look from that perspective, the Jewish mystics call this the Sifra, or the Sifroth, whatever you want to call it, where it's the tree of life with the multiple Sephras that, from Ayin, which is the Ein Sof, or the infinity, or the no thing, to the Shekhinah, or the Malchut, which is the earth and the humanity that's here. And everything branches out into the multiple essences. And I think when we look at, from a perspective of the earth being a living entity, and the cosmos being something that's alive. Now I know this may seem far-fetched. How can space be alive? It's nothing. Well, how can something come from nothing? Stars burst out of apparent nothingness and form these new stars out of nothing. The Big Bang, which is a stupid word for it, is really an expansion that science believes is the origin of the cosmos. It's the cosmological view of science now, is that there was an expansion that happened. An unexplained thing caused everything from one infinitesimal speck to become the cosmos that we have now, and that everything is still continuing to expand. And, science has got the echoes of this electromagnetic expansion that I can't explain the physics behind it, but science is not something that people that adhere to religion should view as threatening. Science is not something that we need to say, it's atheistic. No, it's secular. No, science is science. Science is stuff that's based on experimentation and stuff that's based on fact. And if we can't have beliefs that coincide with facts, then there's something wrong with our beliefs. And what we need to do from this point on, I think, in order to advance as a species, is drop the myths. We don't need them. Embrace who we are. Embrace the fact that each one of us, in essence, is stardust, and that we're all connected to each other in one way or another, and that we're all in this together, and that together we can bring this kingdom, this heavenly essence, this utopian solution. We can make it. Instead of spending billions of dollars to blow people up that we don't like, we should spend that money to help our children advance in knowledge and to feed them and then to go to other places where their children are hungry and feed them. I understand that Christian missionaries do wonderful things, but they spend a lot more time building churches than they do schools. And I think that we shouldn't be going over to help people for the sake of witnessing to them, because we're not doing it in genuine practice to help them. We're trying to spread the good news because we think it's going to buy us a better ticket in heaven. And that part of it is disingenuous. We should do things for the sake of doing them, and we should do things to help people. And we should believe things because we believe them. We shouldn't believe things because we're afraid that if we don't believe them, that we're going to go to some fantasy hell, okay, where we're going to suffer for an eternity because of belief. I think that a God who would punish you for not believing in him, the same God who died did not make it easy to even believe in the concept of him, is a gross injustice. What if I'm wrong? That's the big question. What if I'm wrong? Well, first of all, I'm not saying that God doesn't exist. I'm just saying that our traditional concept of God is not necessarily true, that we need to embrace one that adheres to science, and that we need to recognize that we're connected to everything that exists, and that we should revere what we are, who we are, where we came from. But if I'm wrong, and God is the Almighty sitting in a throne room, well, he's got a lot more explaining to do than I do when that day comes, when we meet. He's going to have to explain to me why so many have suffered and he did nothing. Anyway, that's it for now. Went a little bit longer than I thought, but hopefully you get something out of it, and if not, I'm sorry. I do appreciate the letters of support, and I even appreciate the letters of criticism. I get a little bit out of honest criticism. The emotional type I could do without. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging with me. Namaste.